everyone. Today we are going to study a new lesson called the Talkative Barber, that is Unit 6, on page number 99. Before we start, let us study these 7 new words. Number 1, chatterer. Chatterer means someone who talks a lot. Trongdu, dangnal trongtam. Number 2, defect, a fault. Diklaw na, tsiat na. Number 3, opinion, what a person feels about a person, thing, or subject. Ngaidan. Number 4, exhausted, tired and fed up. Tao. Number 5, dessert, a sweet dish served after the main meal. Here, this picture, this is a dessert, something that you eat after the main meal. Number 6, examine, to look at something very carefully. Endik. Number 7, at length, at a stretch, after a long time. Nakindawatsuan. Right now, let us get into the story, the Talkative Barber. Long ago, a sultan, whose name was Shahryar, ruled over a large kingdom. His queen was a good storyteller. Each night, she would tell a story to the king. She narrated ancient Persian and Arabic folk stories. This is one of the stories from the Arabian Nights. So there is a king, sultan means king, and his queen used to narrate a story to him. The Talkative Barber. In the city of Kashgar lived a barber who was a great talker. Once, the sultan called the barber to shave his head. The barber started talking non-stop instead of shaving him. The sultan got angry. So there's a city, the name of the city is Kashgar. In this city, there's a barber who talks a lot. And the king, the sultan, called this barber to shave his head. But instead of shaving his head, the barber kept on talking. He talks non-stop. Therefore, the sultan got angry. When are you going to stop talking and begin to do your work? The sultan says. The barber replied, you do me an injury by calling me a chatterer, for everyone says I am very quiet. I have 6 brothers, whom you might call chatterers. Their names are Bagban, Bagburya, Bagbak, Alkus, Almashi, and Shakabak. One is humpbacked, one is toothless, one is half-blind, one is quite blind, one is deaf, and the other has a defect in his speech. And they are all great talkers, but I am the youngest of my family, and I am very quiet and sparing with words. So when the sultan says, when are you going to stop talking? The barber replied, you do me an injury by calling me a chatterer. A chatterer is someone who talks a lot, right? So he says, you do me an injury. You do me an injury means you hurt me. He says, you hurt me by calling me a chatterer, because everyone says I am very quiet. And he goes on telling the king about his family. He says, I have 6 brothers and their names are so and so. And he explained their physical appearance. He said, one is humpbacked. Humpbacked to nungpong. Here you can see here the green one, humpbacked. And one is toothless. One is half-blind. That means he's not completely blind. He's blind, but he's not completely blind. One is quite blind. Quite blind. Here he says, for everyone says I am very quiet. Quiet is an adjective, and it means to make very little noise, right? And here we have another word that is quite. Quiet and quite is different. Quite is an adverb, which means to the greatest extent. He is quite blind. That means amitadel ve kopme, right? Amitadel thotni. Or another example will be, she is quite happy. Ahlim kopme, ahlim thotni. And he says one is deaf and the other has a defect in his speech, and they are all great talkers. One is deaf and the other has a defect in his speech to trong, defect harset na harset na, but still he was a great talker. And he says, but I am the youngest of my family, and I am very quiet, ngoite, and sparing with words. Sparing with words means trong claim. After listening to this, the Sultan was tired of hearing the Berber talk, so he says, "Give him 3 pieces of gold," the Sultan cried, losing all patience, "and send him away. I will not be shaved today." Here the king says, "Give him 3 pieces of gold and let him go. I will not be shaved today," because he is losing all his patience. So na. And when the Berber heard this, he says, "My master," cried the Berber, "it was not I who came to seek you. It was you who ordered me to come. So I will not quit your house till I have shaved you. I will not quit your house, so I will not leave your house." So the Berber says, "Master, it was you who called me. I did not come looking for you. So I will not leave your house until and unless I shave you." He then began narrating another story which lasted half an hour. After that, the Berber kept on talking again. And the Sultan was very tired of him talking. So he says, "Stop making your fine speeches and let me go quickly. I have an affair of the greatest importance. I have to go out at noon," said the Sultan. Here, affair to na tilti, right? So the king says, the Sultan says, "Stop talking and do your work quickly. I have a very important affair, and I have to go out at noon." When he saw that the Sultan was really angry with him, the Berber said, "Oh, master, do not be angry. I will begin to shave you." Saying this, he washed the Sultan's head and began to shave. But he had not touched him even 4 times with the razor when he stopped and said, "My master, you are acting hastily in this matter." So when the Berber sees the Sultan very angry, he says, "Okay, master, don't be angry. I will shave you right now." And then he washed the Sultan's head and then he started shaving his head. But he only touched the Sultan's head around 4 times with his razor. Then he stopped again. He had something to say again. He said, "You are acting hastily." Hastily, about this matter, about him going out for his important affair. "Go on shaving me. Speak no more," ordered the Sultan. "Be patient," said the Berber. "Perhaps you have not considered well what you were going to do. I wish you would tell me what this matter of great importance is all about, and then I will give you my opinion on it." And so the Sultan says, "Go on shaving me. Stop talking. Speak no more." But the Berber says, "Be patient." Patient means dothe. Patient is adjective. It means dothe. Right? Patience, katsu noun niya, dothe na. So the Berber says, "Be patient, dothero." Right? "Be patient," said the Berber. "Perhaps you have not considered well what you were going to do. Please tell me what you are going to do, and then I will give you my opinion." Right? "Finish saving at once," the Sultan exclaimed. But instead of doing this, the Berber left the Sultan half-shaved to go and see what time it was. "My patience is exhausted," the Sultan cried. And so the Sultan did not answer to the Berber. He says, "Finish shaving me at once." Finish what you are doing at once. Do it fast. But the Berber did not do this. Instead of doing this, he dropped his razor. He left the Sultan, the king, half-shaved, and he went to see what time it was. And seeing this, the Sultan cried and he said, "My patience is exhausted, aralto." And the Berber says, "Be calm, my master, and you shall be shaved in a moment," said the Berber. And saying this, he continued shaving the Sultan. But while he was doing this, he could not help talking. So when the Sultan cried, "My patience is exhausted," the Berber came back to him and said, be calm, I will shave you." And then he started shaving the Sultan's head again. But while doing this, he cannot keep quiet. He cannot help himself from talking. He started talking again. And he says, "If you could inform me what this important affair is, I would give more advice, which you might find useful, he said. So he says, if you would just tell me what you are going to do, then I will give you advice and then that might be useful for you. And the Sultan was completely fed up by now and decided to satisfy the barber. He told him that he was giving a feast to some friends at noon, which was why he was in a hurry to leave. So the Sultan was completely fed up so meaning todo to by the barber. So he just gives in. He just tells the barber what he's going to do, what he was going to do. And he says that I'm giving a feast to some friends. We're going to have a feast, and that is why I'm in a hurry to leave. When the barber heard the Sultan mention a feast, he exclaimed, "That reminds me, yesterday I invited 4 or 5 friends to come to my house today, but I had quite forgotten it and have not made any preparations for them." The Sultan, who was at the mercy of the barber, was ready to do anything to get rid of him. So when the barber heard the Sultan mention the word feast, he remembered something. He says, "That reminds me, yesterday I invited few friends to come to my house, but I had quite forgotten it." That means and have not made any preparations for them. I did not make anything for them. And the Sultan, who was at the mercy of the barber, the king was at the mercy of the barber because he's shaving his head and his head is half shaved. So he was ready to do anything to get rid of him. "Be quick and finish your work," the Sultan replied, "and you shall have all the food that has been prepared for me today." So the Sultan tells the barber, "Be fast, finish shaving me fast, and then I will give you all this food that is prepared for me today." On hearing this, the barber says, "Please show me the food so that I may judge if it is enough for my 5 friends." And hearing this, the Sultan says, "I have enough food for you," the Sultan exclaimed, but he ordered that all the food prepared for his feast brought in. So they bring in all the food that was prepared for the feast. The barber looked over the food and said, "This is very good, but I shall want some fruit for the dessert also." The Sultan, in desperation, since his head was half shaved, ordered that the fruits should also be brought in. Now when they bring in all the food, the barber went and looked all the food, and he said, "All these are very good, but then I will need some fruits for dessert." And so the Sultan ordered that the fruits should also be brought in. The barber left off shaving the Sultan to examine each dish separately. This took up half an hour. The barber left off shaving to look at each dish separately, and then this takes another half an hour. And the Sultan was so impatient now. He stamped his feet impatiently, but the barber did not hurry. He stamped his feet. Alright, he was so impatient now. But the barber did not hurry. At length, however, he again took the razor, but after a few minutes of work, stopped suddenly and cried, "I never knew that you were so generous." So after a long time, he came back again and took the razor again and started shaving the Sultan's head again. But only after a few minutes he stopped again and says, "I never knew that you were so generous." Generous means tilphal. And we have come to the end of the story.